That truck in the parking lot, engine running, no one behind the wheel, 3 in the morning, isn't broken down. The driver isn't forgetful. And it's not laziness. That engine is running because turning it off could destroy it, put the driver in danger, and wipe out a cargo worth more than most people make in a year, all at the same time. By the end of this video, you'll never look at an idling semi the same way again. Here's what most people assume. A truck engine works like a car engine. You turn the key, it starts, you turn it off, done. Cold morning? Maybe let it warm up for a minute. No big deal. That assumption is wrong in almost every important way. A diesel engine in a Class 8 truck, that's your standard 18-wheeler, is not a scaled-up version of what's under your car hood. It displaces anywhere from 11 to 16 liters. That's roughly 6 to 8 times the size of a typical car engine. And the physics of what happens inside that engine at low temperatures are completely different. When a diesel engine sits cold, the oil inside the system drains down into the pan. It stops circulating. And when temperatures drop, that oil doesn't just sit there thin and ready to go. It thickens. In extreme cold, it can get close to the consistency of molasses. Now imagine trying to push molasses through a network of narrow metal channels the moment you fire that engine up. The components, the bearings, the camshaft, the turbocharger, they start moving before the oil can reach them. Those first few seconds, they're running essentially dry. In a car, that's not ideal, but it's manageable because the tolerances are built for it and the distances are short. In a diesel engine running at high compression, those seconds of metal-on-metal contact without proper lubrication add up fast. Engineers call it cold start wear, and it's one of the leading causes of premature engine failure in diesel equipment. A long-haul diesel engine, properly maintained, can last over 1 million miles. Cold start wear is one of the things that cuts that life short. So when a driver in Minnesota in January decides not to shut off that engine overnight, part of what they're thinking about is the machine itself. Not sentiment. Pure mechanical self-interest. If that kind of thinking is new to you, go ahead and hit the like button. This is the stuff the trucking industry lives by, and almost nobody outside of it ever talks about it. But the engine is only the beginning. Because there's something inside that cab that most people don't realize exists at all. The sleeper cab on a modern long-haul truck is not a seat with a curtain behind it. It's a bedroom, a full berth with a mattress, storage, sometimes a small refrigerator, a microwave, a television. It's where the driver lives for days at a time. And everything in that space, the heat, the air conditioning, the electrical outlets, the lights, all of it runs off the engine. There is no separate house current. There is no wall outlet. When the engine is off, the cab goes dark and cold. Now think about what that means in winter. Say it's January in South Dakota. The truck is parked at a rest stop. Outside temperature is -10 degrees Fahrenheit. The driver shuts off the engine and goes to sleep. Within 30 minutes, the cab temperature has dropped significantly. Within an hour, it's approaching outside temperature. -10 is not uncomfortable. -10 is dangerous. Hypothermia begins well above freezing, as high as 50 degrees Fahrenheit if someone is wet or exhausted. But at -10, in a metal box with no insulation running, it becomes a legitimate survival situation. Drivers have died this way. Not many, but it has happened, and the industry knows it. This is not a hypothetical risk that trucking companies put in training slides to seem thorough. It's the reason the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has specific guidance on driver rest conditions. It's the reason truck stops across the northern United States do serious business selling auxiliary heaters and cab insulation kits. The cold is a real operational threat, and the engine running through the night is the most reliable answer to it. If you're finding this useful, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. There's a lot more in this channel about how the machines that run the world actually work. Now here's where it gets more complicated. Because it's not just the driver at risk. The cargo has its own requirements, and they can be just as unforgiving. Refrigerated trailers, called reefers in the industry, carry pharmaceuticals, vaccines, fresh produce, meat, dairy. The reefer unit on the back of the trailer is its own engine, running its own refrigeration system. But on many setups, the power and systems monitoring for that reefer unit are tied into the truck's main electrical architecture. And more importantly, the driver is responsible for the cargo. Not just morally responsible, legally and financially responsible. If a load of insulin reaches its destination above the maximum allowed temperature because the driver shut off the reefer overnight, that driver and the carrier face liability for the entire shipment. A single pharmaceutical load can be worth anywhere from $50,000 to several $100,000. The math on keeping the engine running becomes very simple when the alternative is losing your job and facing a lawsuit in the same week. I was on a site visit years ago at a cold storage distribution facility, the kind of place where trucks back in around the clock, and a logistics manager there told me something I hadn't considered before. He said the drivers who'd been doing this for 20 years didn't think about the reefer as a separate system. They thought of the whole truck, engine, cab, trailer, as one living thing that had to be kept alive through the night. That image stuck with me, because it's actually the most accurate mental model for how these vehicles operate. But here's the thing that genuinely surprised me when I started looking at this closely. And it's the part that almost no one covers when they talk about truck idling. The diesel fuel itself can freeze. Not freeze solid, exactly. But at low enough temperatures, the paraffin wax that naturally exists in diesel fuel begins to crystallize. The fuel gels. It goes from a fluid that flows easily through fuel lines to a semi-solid that clogs filters and stops the engine from drawing fuel at all. The technical term is gel point, and it varies by fuel blend. Summer diesel gels at a higher temperature than winter diesel, which is why fuel suppliers adjust the blend seasonally. But even winter blend diesel has a gel point. In the northern plains states, in a severe cold snap, you can hit it. Here's what that means in practice. A driver shuts off the engine. Temperature drops overnight to -20, -25. By morning, the fuel in the lines and the filter has started to gel. The driver turns the key. Nothing happens. Not a hard start. Not a rough idle. Nothing. The engine cannot draw fuel. That truck is not moving until someone comes out with a block heater, additives, and sometimes a heat gun to warm the fuel filter housing directly. In a rest stop 200 miles from the nearest dealership, in a blizzard, at 6 in the morning, that situation becomes serious very quickly. Experienced drivers who run northern routes. I'm talking about the people who haul freight across North Dakota and Montana in January. Know the gel point of their fuel blend, almost instinctively. They know the overnight low forecast the way a pilot checks weather before a flight. And when those temperatures approach dangerous territory, there is no debate about whether the engine stays running. It stays running. That's the decision. The trucking industry has been working on alternatives for decades. Auxiliary power units, APUs, are small, independent diesel generators mounted to the frame of the truck that can run the cab's heat and electrical systems without running the main engine. They're more fuel efficient, they reduce emissions, and they're increasingly required in states with anti-idling laws. California, New York, Texas. A growing number of states have regulations that restrict or fine idling in populated areas. Drivers can face real penalties, but APUs cost $10,000 to $15,000 to install. Not every carrier has them. Not every truck has them. And in the coldest conditions, even an APU has limitations. It's not designed to fight -30, and it won't keep a reefer unit running the way the main engine will. So the gap between what the regulation says and what the physics demands is real. and it falls on the driver to navigate it every single night. So here's what you actually know now. That truck idling in the parking lot at 3 in the morning isn't wasting fuel out of habit. It's protecting a 1,500 horsepower machine from cold start wear. It's keeping a driver alive in a metal box at -10 degrees. It's maintaining a chain of custody over cargo that might be someone's medication. And, in the coldest conditions, it's the only thing standing between a $200,000 piece of equipment and a fuel system that won't function until noon. The next time you're at a highway rest stop and you hear that low diesel rumble in the dark, you'll know exactly what's happening. And you'll know something that most people, including people who drive past trucks every day of their lives, have never stopped to figure out. And if you've ever seen one of these trucks sitting in a parking lot at night with the engine running, or if you've driven long haul yourself and lived this, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe if you want to keep going down this road. There are 2 more videos on screen right now that I think you'll find just as surprising as this one. Pick one, and I'll see you there.